Hello, everyone. I'm Amir Sharif. I'm the VP of Product and Marketing at Opsani, and I'm honored to be joined by Ravi and by Russ, two of my partners and customers. Ravi, why don't you introduce yourself, followed
Yeah,
by Russ?
yeah, sure. Thanks, Amir. I'm Ravi Lachhman. I'm an evangelist at Harness, a CD as a service platform company.
And I'm Russ Barnett. I'm the Chief Architect at Ancestry. I'm sure you've seen our ads on TV, but we're the largest provider of family history and DNA related software.
Well, Russ and Ravi, thank you for being available today. I wanted to talk about uh, the agile enterprise when it comes to software development and specifically CI/CD and understanding why those practices make a company differentiated and looking forward what we can expect to come in terms of innovations. But Russ, I wanted to start with you first. Can you tell us how Ancestry accelerated software development with CI/CD, CO, and imagine that you became a lot more responsive to your customers? I'd just like to understand the whole gambit with what you did with CI/CD and then how you injected optimization into the mix.
Yeah, so what we find today is that both consumers and businesses that use software, they're very expectant of constantly evolving that software to deliver more value. And at the same time, they're expecting the same high quality experiences and the always on nature of software they have in the past. And at Ancestry, we've been a long user of CI/CD. We started way back in 2008 with a CI/CD product back then. But over the years, we found that we didn't scale our practices and our tools to meet with the ever changing needs of our consumers and our customers. So we really started seeing problems a lot with making changes as quickly as we wanted to, but also as safely as we wanted to. We started seeing more difficulties with downtime or problems on our products because we were making changes very quickly, but we couldn't make them as safely. And so that's where we started really looking for the tooling that would let us do both very productive and quick changes to our products, but also very safe and always on experiences for our customers.
Well, thank you. And when did you inject optimization into the mix?
Yeah, so optimization came kind of the same time where we were seeing that we couldn't scale at that rate of feature development. Every feature affects your performance, and we didn't want to have these long optimization cycles that maybe traditionally people in the software business have had to do, where they're really coming out of their agile processes and doing an optimization cycle for a few months. And we couldn't really afford to do that. With the complexity of our software, we needed tooling that could really optimize continuously as we developed new software and released it, that it would be sort of automatically tuned and optimized for performance and for cost.
Very well. And I understand that you turned to Harness to give you a platform for CI/CD. Why Harness in particular?
Yeah, Harness was the vendor that we found that we felt most aligned with our goals. Many of the vendors, they focus very specifically on team productivity, which is great. We like that. But we also needed some element of governance and best practices and leveraging those best practices. We had a lot of Jenkins deploys on our teams. In fact, almost every team was using their own flavor of Jenkins, their own methodologies in Jenkins. And we found that maybe a team here and there would be doing a really great practice. Maybe they had a way to do maybe feature flags and run, roll all their software dark and then turn it on to a very small percentage of users to test it, very advanced there. But it would only be one team that was doing that. And another team might have really great practices in another area. So we really wanted to be able to leverage those improvements on our processes across all of our teams. And that's where we turn to Harness to do that.
Very good. And Ravi, from your perspective, um, what sets Ancestry apart from other companies that don't adopt CI/CD, and I'm curious about hard numbers that you can provide in terms of benefits when people have a platform that can accelerate the software development with a tool like Harness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it all boils down to the organization, right? So Russ's organization is a good example. You have a lot of different disparate development teams. I'll kind of take the question like this. So I must have been in probably a dozen dev teams in my career, but every single team that I've been on, we always deploy our software differently. It's one thing I couldn't take team from team, even though my background's in Java. So Java's Java, Java's Java. Versus, well, how do you get to production? It's up to the sophistication of the team. Like Russ, you mentioned, certain teams were more sophisticated just because they were out of necessity versus other teams, they might not have that sophistication. And so what the Harness platform does, it kind of helps unify and harmonize that. And so there's a lot of learning that's in the platform. We're a pretty opinionated platform. So what that means is that we kind of look at how other folks kind of deploy, like your Googles and Facebooks and whatnot, and try to help any organization deploy like that, right? You don't have to necessarily be in the Valley. You can have that level of expertise, the non-functional requirements, such as, let's say, how do you verify something, how you promote something, that's all given to you out of the box. So in terms of improvement, it really depends where the org is. If they're just starting out in their journey, they're going to have a much higher level of improvement. But most of our customers, we're getting them to deploy multiple times a day, which is fantastic. I'm not sure if I toss it back to Russ if you have stats about how many of your teams do that, but that's something we definitely help enable.
Yeah, actually, since we started using Harness, we were already going this direction. But in the last probably couple of years, and we've been using Harness for about a year, but in the last couple of years, we've gone from an average of maybe one deploy a week to almost every team is deploying at least once a day and some multiple times a day. So it's been a big difference.
And Russ, it was your idea that our two companies speak, Opsani and Harness. What prompted you with that idea, and what benefits have you seen from us being part of the Harness software factory, if you would?
Yeah, what we were finding, we worked with Opsani starting probably almost 2 years ago or 18 months ago. I can't remember exactly how long, but and what we found is we were getting great recommendations out of the Opsani artificial intelligence engine to say you ought to optimize your software this way. But like a lot of artificial intelligence, there's not a lot of transparency into why that decision is being made. And sometimes the innovation coming out of that would give our developers solutions that they couldn't really see why they were going to help. And so getting the trust into that, into the developers being willing to deploy those suggestions really was helpful to have Harness, in that we were able to integrate it with Harness, and they knew the confidence that Harness would be able to deploy that new configuration, deploy to a canary and make sure it was working, that the error rates were not higher than other instances in your pool, that it would roll it back easily if it was causing a problem. Just the trust of that if something was not going to work, that we could really handle it well, and that Harness gave us that trust. So since we've implemented the two together, we've really had a lot of acceleration in terms of rolling out more optimization.
And can you provide any kind of metrics in terms of both speed and efficiency that you've gotten from Harness and Opsani together?
Yeah, so a system that really hasn't been hand-tuned beforehand, just kind of exposing it for the first time to Opsani or an optimization process, we've seen cost to performance savings of up to about 35%. And then on ones that have been very hand-tuned, even 15%. If somebody takes a long time and hand-tune something, we still find gains of about 15%. And we're seeing that because I think that Opsani, its artificial intelligence engine, thinks of things that a developer doesn't occur to the developer, doesn't try, because they just don't seem like they're going to help. But the Opsani solution really finds the optimum solution for your configuration to run at the best possible price and performance ratio.
Well, thank you. And Ravi, I wanted to ask you, I mean, the way I understand your platform is as an opinionated way to customize individual customers' software rollout capabilities and to plug in other tools in a kind of a Kanban assembly line fashion. Do I have that understanding correct?
Yeah, that's pretty close. So actually, the kind of the benefit that the Harness platform gives, it mimics what your best engineers would do. So I'll do a little role play. Ross, you're my boss. Congrats, or I'm sorry.
Right.
Depending how you look at it. So like, let's say like Ross directed, like I'm on a team that works with Russ, or he's like the app owner or dev manager on the team. Russ might be like, Ravi, go and deploy something. So if you mimic our interactions, we'll be tailing logs, repping logs, like there's a lot of institutional knowledge of what's going on when you're deploying something. And this is the hard part about every deployment. Team to team is different. And so what the Harness platform does, it actually learns like, hey, you know what, this was normal, this is abnormal. You should roll back here, you shouldn't roll back here, and kind of mimics the interaction of Russ and I would have. Two experienced engineers, but we're people, we only scale so much versus you can roll that out. If you're using the Kanban example, you can roll that out pretty much to multiple teams pretty quickly, like mimic your best engineers pretty quickly.
And then how does inclusion of tools like Opsani fall within that mimicked human interaction?
I like Russ's example. It's that if you're getting some sort of, let's say, optimization, you can really quickly try that. Kind of going back to the engineering dilemma that's there, like as a software engineer myself, it's, do I really want to try something? I know the pain that's going to take me to get into production. So I'm probably not going to try something unless I know 100% it's going to, have multiple magnitudes of success versus, oh boy, here's another change. I'm going to get chewed out by Russ because I broke something again. And so the ability to even interact those changes, you can start, I like that, what Russ said, making confidence in the optimizations, right? You're able to do it. You know what? I have a safety net. If something doesn't go right, we can prove the data did it work, did not work. And so in terms of tool integration, yes, like if there's suggestions from an Opsani standpoint, absolutely Harness can be that delivery mechanism versus if there's markers from other tools, like observability tools or APM tools, Harness can start taking those and also saying, hey, it's working, it's not working. So really that conduit to make a change.
And what I'm hoping to see from the world is a world where continuous optimization becomes part of CI/CD. So we have continuous integration, continuous delivery, and because software is getting so interdependent and complex, that we use some of the AI capabilities that companies like us have provided to constantly tune the workloads, so engineers don't have to worry about the handcrafting, the artisan practice of tuning software, adjusting the amount of CPUs and so forth. So ideally, I'm oversimplifying, but imagine pressing kind of a random number generator where it just populates the amount of CPU, the amount of memory, the amount of replicas and so forth that you need, and then just letting it out in the wild and let the AI engine define what's optimal based on the performance that you want. So that's the CO component of the CI/CD that I'm hoping the world to see. But to do that change, a lot of trust is needed, and Russ, you alluded to that. There's kind of a trust of the technology itself, and then there's trust in the process between a human-to-human relationship. Can you talk about how you and Ancestry address that trust issue and how Harness help with that trust mission?
Yeah, for sure. So we had been using Opsani for about a year, and we would go into the Opsani dashboard and they would say, you've got $500,000 that you could save if you just applied these, yearly savings, you applied these recommendations. And we would talk to the teams and we were like, why didn't you do this? And it was just this nervousness that we would get, that they were just nervous about it. And again, this idea that Ravi talked about, that it's actually a lot of effort to get a change to production, especially if you are thinking that you have to have a lot of manual checkup steps and, is it doing okay? It's a lot of effort. And so I think this is something that's been throughout the software development ecosystem, is trying to make these smaller changes that your pipeline is very good at rolling and you can trust. And that's one of the things we found with Opsani that actually helped make a good model for other changes in our pipelines, because in general at Ancestry, a lot of our developers were really overly babysitting their pipelines, and they get into the habit of not just being able to press a button and trusting that their pipeline is going to do the right thing. And so one of the great things about using Opsani is it helped the developers to say, no, what we really want to do is build a pipeline that we trust, that makes a change and rolls it out in a very small way and tests it, and that we don't have to babysit that, and we can go back and apply that to our feature changes as well. That we feel like if we roll those feature changes in a way that we trust, then we'll be able to do those again without a lot of babysitting. So it's really led to a change of culture, in part driven by the Opsani product.
And Ravi, I imagine that you've seen this trust issue before. How do you think Harness as a tool help create trust between different teams across an engineering organization?
So all of this trust is, when looking at things from an engineering standpoint, usually if you're trying things for the first time, or let's say we're implementing a new technology, a lot of times we think of the happy path. I'm very prone to that. I'm like, there'll never be a problem. These are the 4 steps that we need to do. And if there's a problem, it's not going to happen. But the more experience you get, and as you start getting, as I'm starting to gray in hair and grow in size, as a more senior engineer now, you kind of start to forecast, okay, this is not going to work the first time. So how do we work on when something goes wrong? And bringing those use cases back, like if you have a clear, let's say, back out plan, if you have a clear way of rolling something back, you're willing to try things a little bit quicker, saying, okay, if we implement this change and there is a failure, can we back out quickly? And if the answer is yes, then there's a lot of trust. Like, okay, even if it doesn't work, again, going back to Russ as my manager now, it's like, okay, Ravi, you can try it because your impact, your blast radius is not going to be that much. We can recover, or the fancy term is MTTR, right? We can recover or resolute something pretty quickly. And so that trust is kind of built systematically. And as that occurs, like going back to the culture, like as that permeates team to team, the culture tends to change, right? So usually initial behavior, gut reaction, software engineers is yes, make the change. Operations engineer, no, don't make the change. And as time goes on, the culture, the behaviors will kind of align and culture will change based on your confidence to kind of pull back.
Very well. And as we're coming to the end of the time, I want to just reflect on kind of an observation that I've had looking at Ancestry. And Russ, I've been in a valley since the 90s, and I've seen a lot of software development companies. And there are good practices, bad practices. And one thing I can say is that Ancestry is a cutting edge software development shop. And I want to understand your perspective on what separates Ancestry from its peers and why you are in a cutting edge. And then part 2 of the question is, what do you think is coming down in a DevOps movement, and how will you leverage that movement, and how should other software companies leverage that movement in order to become cutting edge themselves?
Yeah. So one aspect of a cutting edge company, I think, is really that we're continuously looking for improvement in our processes. And many companies sort of look at problems like, oh, we implemented agile development practices and we're done. And we did that, and then we implemented good CI/CD practices and we're done. But in reality, every new development affects pretty much all the aspects of the software development lifecycle. And so being able to go back and look at each one of your processes over and over again, and rescaling, if you originally scaled your development by using Agile and CI really well, but then you add really good CD, it's actually, your Agile processes actually might be your scaling limiter at that point. So you got to go back and reevaluate everything. And that's one thing Ancestry has been willing to do, is look at the whole picture and just find out where the bottlenecks are and keep trying to improve those. And then we also, of course, look for really great technology partners like Harness and Opsani to overcome some of these problems. And usually when we look around, we find a real outlier. This has been interesting with both Opsani and Harness. Just at the right time, we needed a solution. We looked at the competitive landscape in continuous optimization and continuous delivery, and found that these two companies were really the ones that stood out, that were innovating on this kind of scale and level that we wanted to innovate on. So I would say that's really the secret is finding places in your process that you improve and finding partners that will help you improve those places.
And the subtext of what you said is not just finding those places, but doing them continuously.
Absolutely.
So continuous improvement is part of the CI/CD/CO.
Yep, exactly. And as far as what's next, I do think that there's kind of two things that happen. We're seeing more capabilities applied to all levels of software development. Like we're seeing machine learning and AI enter into CI and CD and CO. And so I think we will get some more capabilities that come along. One of the things that I'm starting to see more of in the industry is having every process be more aware of your business KPIs, where it's not just, when you finally deploy something to a customer, you start to measure your business KPIs. You have an idea when you check code in maybe and you run your first CI test, you might already find out that you might have a change to one of your business KPIs. So I think that's one of the things that might be coming. Another thing that is going to happen, I'm sure, is having entire new disciplines added. And I'm seeing one right now, which is emerging, which is I call continuous experimentation. So it's this sort of customer experimentation, but done continuously rather than at Ancestry. We're really not good at this yet. We do, we roll out a split test and we run it for, a few weeks, and then we roll out another one and run it for a few weeks. So there might be completely new disciplines like that come out as well.
Very well, and thank you very much for the kind words. And Ravi, do you have any parting advice for our community out in the world and how they can expect the DevOps world to change and how they can take advantage of those changes?
Oh yeah, I think a little more of a cliche answer. I think some predictions going into next year. There's always two things that are always pressing. It's one, it's giving people more choice, and two, reducing complexity. Like if you're able to balance both of those things, I think those are going to be a lot of driving factors like into the next year and how people do automation. When talking to several customers, just being frank, like folks have been impacted by the pandemic, right? And so some of the skill sets that they had are not available anymore. So very custom based solutions, very single person failure solutions were triggered versus from, let's say, organizations that didn't face that before were facing it. And so there's a big investment in removing complexity and also giving your engineers choice in what they're doing.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. And I wish you both very happy holidays and a successful new year. And I'm sure all of us will have a better 2021 than we had 2020. That was a exceptional year in the course of human history, and I'm not kidding. As well. And again, I'm grateful for the advice that you had and your time today. So happy holidays and see you next year.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you as well.
Thanks, y'all. Happy holidays.